Hi, good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about the impact of the GDPR and more broadly privacy on marketing. And we have Kapil Tyagi with us today. So before we start, just a little bit, what are your opinions, Kapil? So on GDPR Day, it's going to come up in one more day, and it's been 4 years since GDPR has come into force. So what are your thoughts on that?
Hello, everyone. Yes, GDPR has come in picture since 2016 and after enforced in 2018. And this is the most stringent and wide regulation in the world related to privacy. And it has changed the complete map of the world into the privacy arena because it is very stringent and they have continuously the supervisory authorities are putting fines and reprimanding the companies for the non-compliance and all that. So because of that, and it is already covering a large part of the world, like 27, 30 countries in European and EA region. So, and the other countries which are doing the business with European countries, they also have to follow the GDPR. So that is why it is having an important role in the world. So in 4 years, companies started aligning and compliance with the GDPR. They are now more thinking about the privacy. World is getting more aware because of GDPR in the world. And that is why I think we are also discussing these matters and these topics to spread more awareness about the privacy.
Yeah, that's true, sir. So just an introduction about Tsaaro. So we're a leading privacy and cybersecurity consulting company, and we've helped startups as well as MNCs in building their privacy programs and in various certifications such as ISO 27001 and 27701 as well. So let's move on to our speakers today. So I am one of the speakers, and then we have Kapil sir. So just a little bit of an introduction about myself. So I'm a senior data protection consultant here at Tsaaro, and I'm CIPPE certified, and I'm also a certified TPO. Just a little bit about my past experience. I've worked with various companies to help them building their privacy programs. I've done PIAs, ROPAs, data mapping exercises, and I have helped in terms of compliance with the GDPR, CCPA, as well as the Malaysian and Singapore laws. So that's just a little bit about myself. And Kapil sir, would you like to take a minute to just introduce yourself as well?
Yes, Urshila. So I'm Kapil Tyagi, and I'm working with Coforge Limited, heading the data privacy team as a senior consultant out there. And I'm certified CIPPE, CIPM, and also then IAPP has designated me as FIP. Other than this, I have certain other certifications from Data Security Council of India in the area of data privacy. So I'm working in this area since the GDPR's inception, since 2016. So I have get the chance to create or part of the data privacy framework in large organization as well as to our clients as well.
Okay. So just a little bit of a disclaimer that the opinions that I expressed in this presentation are ours and not of the companies. And also that we will be recording this session and it'll probably be uploaded. So those of you guys who can't attend the whole session, you can access it later on. So let's move on to the agenda for today. So like we started out our discussion about the importance that GDPR has taken in today's world, we're going to start out with the effect of GDPR on marketing. Why should marketing companies or marketers in general comply with the GDPR or privacy regulations? The GDPR requirements for marketers, GDPR compliance checklist, and lastly, what happens if you don't comply with the GDPR. So let's start out with why is data so important for marketing? So we've seen that recently most companies are interested in targeted marketing or targeted advertisements. So how do they do this? It's obviously through the data that they collect. And they do this so that their marketing strategies are more effective in nature. So, Kapil, so what's your opinion? Why do you think data is so important for marketing?
Yes, actually, marketing, especially the digital marketing these days and since last 10-15 years, it makes important role in the organizations. So because of they want the correct and good amount of data to create the new proposals, the necessity of requirement and arranging the means to sending the cold calls or their advertisement campaigns to the right audience, whatever they have. So having the correct data is very effective for them to get the best result out of that.
Okay, that's true. So, yeah, like you said, there's been a drastic shift in terms of how marketing is done as well. Companies are moving more towards digital marketing, and that's why data is becoming so important for them. So, we have a question for everybody in the audience today is whether privacy compliance is applicable to marketing activities. You can just go to Menti, and there's a code at the top here that you can use, and you can just put in your responses about whether you think that privacy compliance is necessary for marketing, whether it's a yes, no, or do you think maybe in some situations they would have to comply. You guys can put in your responses. And so until we wait for these responses, Kapil, so let's try and discuss, what kinds of data are marketing companies actually collecting, and why would they be under the GDPR or say any other privacy regulation?
Yes. Normally, the marketing companies don't need much internal information, but yes, they need the to target that they need minimum the phone number, email address, name, or the certain PIIs. And these days, the targeted marketing because of in the digital arena, so they are taking the location or their preferences as well. So because of what kind of data these all things comes in PII and the regulations in the world related to privacy, they all said that if you are processing the personal information, so if you are processing the PIIs or SPIs of a person, then in that case you have to comply with the regulation.
Okay, yes. So as we can see, we've got 9 responses saying yes and one saying maybe. So, like we were discussing, because personal data and personal attributes of an individual are being collected, like you mentioned, their name, their email address, their behavior online, probably their phone number sometimes, consumer preferences, all of this kind of data is considered to be personal data, and sometimes special categories of data under the GDPR and other privacy regulations. And that's why privacy compliance is important in terms of marketing. So, moving on, let's see how data privacy and marketing is interconnected. So, because, like I mentioned previously, that there is an increased shift towards digital marketing in specific, there's obviously an intersection between data privacy and marketing activities. Further, we've seen that there are numerous regulations that are being enacted to regulate marketing and also just collection of personal data online in general. And also, there's a certain requirement of transparency that's being imposed on companies, and especially in terms of marketing, that various privacy regulations require you to inform users about their rights, about the data that you're collecting, and what exactly you're doing with their data. So this is what we mean by a transparency requirement. So apart from the general intersection, we just like to understand from everybody who's attending this session today, what do you think? Do you think it's the responsibility of marketers to ensure that the rights of data subjects are fulfilled, or whose obligation is that? Do they have any obligation? Is what we'd like to understand. So, Kapil, so what are your thoughts on this? Is there any obligation on marketers to ensure that data subjects have rights and that they can exercise them? And if so, like what kind of rights are we talking about here?
Yes, Urshila. Actually, any organization, company, if they are processing the personal information, especially in the marketing area, because they are directly dealing with the data subject, with the person using their personal information. So they have to be comply with the regulations. And the beauty of these regulations, which comes in picture in last 4 5 years, so they have given certain rights to the individual. So all the marketers, they have to take care of to comply with the GDPR or the other regulation. They have to make sure that the data subject whose personal information they are processing, they have to take care of their rights, like right to access to be correct data or data accuracy, and right to removal. Or if they want, the individual wants that they don't want to be the part of this particular processing, then they can object about it, or they can ask to opt out from that system. That is why if you see that when a marketer is sending the cold mails, so there should be the provision to unsubscribe as well with the subscription. So these kind of things, these are the things which marketers can take care and comply with the GDPR or other regulations.
Okay. So, like you mentioned about cold emailing. So, when we've seen as a consulting company and as consultants, we've gone to different companies and help them in terms of compliance. I think one department that's of special focus is probably the marketing department. And they have an extreme fear that they're going to have to change the way that they do their advertising and marketing, primarily because there's so much regulation around, collecting personal data. So, in light of that, do you think that cold emailing is still allowed under the GDPR? And if so, what are the kind of obligations that companies have to comply with when they're sending out cold emails? Is that still allowed after the GDPR has been passed?
Actually, GDPR directly does not restrict that you send the cold mails or not. GDPR wants that you just have to meet certain criteria when you are sending the emails. So there is no restriction from the regulation side. Like, because cold mails are the important marketing technique, right? And it is good and quite effective. So, but what it is important that they should be GDPR compliant when you are sending those cold emails. The main reason why cold emailing earned a bad reputation, because companies starting bombarding people with tons of email without thinking about what their needs or their interest, right? So the real reason of enforcing is what to put at end of these unethical marketing practices and to protect the individual's privacy. So there is nothing. The emails are very much allowed, because GDPR don't say that you have to stop your business or whatever you are doing. GDPR is there to ease your business, not to put a curb on that. So send the cold mails as many as you want, but just take care that what are the requirements of GDPR. Just met them, and you are good to go.
Okay, so that's exactly what we're trying to point out today as well, about why should marketers care about privacy. So something that we've seen as a trend in the recent times is that privacy is becoming sort of a USP or a unique selling point for companies. Such as, say, for example, we've seen it with Apple, that they want privacy to be at a unique selling point for them and their products. So that's something that companies should look at as a plus point or a positive. Another thing is that once you build trust and make privacy the center of your organization and your activities, you can see that inbound marketing is also a great methodology to use once you've built your customer base and customer trust. Further, another reason, of course, why you should comply is because non-compliance can be extremely burdensome for your company, because in terms of not only monetary losses, but also in terms of loss of your reputation. So this is some of the reasons why you should be complying with privacy regulations, or why we think that marketing companies and marketers in general should comply with privacy laws. So we have another question for the audience out here, is it important for marketers to maintain transparency while collecting data? So just a little bit of context to this question. Transparency is one of the most important principles under the GDPR, and it's extremely pertinent when it comes to marketing activities. So, Kapil, so what do you think, is the obligation of transparency on companies when they're doing marketing? And what do we mean by this transparency?
Yes. Basically, marketer, when they are dealing with or sending the communication or planning their strategies, the main thing is trust. They have to build the trust with the individual. In any relation, trust comes when you are transparent. So transparent in the sense of in when we are talking about GDPR or privacy. So trust building through the transparency is when I'm collecting some data, some information from the individual, from data subject. At that time, I should be fair. There should be some legal reason that why I'm collecting this data, what information I'm collecting from you, like we have shown in previous slide that what kind of data which comes under the PII. So what kind of data I'm collecting, what kind of processing we are going to do on this particular personal data, for what purpose we will be using this, right? And these all information should be shared with the individual, and there should be option that to opt out if any time the person wants, so they feel safe and secure. The individual will find it more transparent, and the trust building will be there. And when there is trust building, then there are chances to grow your business, to get the more leads. Because in previous question also, I want to add that main thing is trust building with the individual. When if we want more leads, increase sales, right, and improved experience with the individual, GDPR is helping you because you have to do certain kind of things to comply with the regulation. Like you are cleaning your personal database, personal information database to whom you are sending the informations, right? So it means you are going to the right targeting audience. You are not just sending to anyone and everyone. You are so more targeted it is, more limited it is, and you will get the best result out of it. So GDPR is helping you out actually, the marketers, if we are using the correct practices.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And this is something that we've always told our clients as well, that GDPR or any privacy regulations are not here to stop marketing activities, but in fact, just enhance the way that you market and make sure that you are doing effective marketing as well. So some of the aspects of marketing that have been impacted by the GDPR. So overall, marketing as a whole has been affected, but we also see specific aspects like we were discussing, sending out marketing emails. That's something that has been largely impacted. Customer data, such as ensuring that you're deleting the data on time, and when there's a deletion request by the customer, or say when they say unsubscribe to your marketing emails, you ensure that you stop sending those marketing emails. So that is something that's been impacted. Another aspect is cookies and collection of personal data through, say, web tracking technologies. And another aspect that we also discussed in terms of your emailing and marketing is obtaining explicit consent. And also your chat tools that capture user IDs, say on your web pages. So something I'd like to look at further is permissions and the need for explicit consent. So now we keep talking about, the lawful basis for processing data under the GDPR. And we've seen that there are multiple lawful bases, but one of the most commonly used is explicit consent or consent as a basis. So is there any other lawful basis that companies can take when they are marketing and when they're sending out marketing emails or advertising? Is there any other lawful basis under the GDPR, or is it only on the basis of consent?
Consent is actually there because majority of time we are sending emails or collecting the information directly from the data subject. Another lawful reason can be for the marketing purpose. that should be legitimate interest in some cases, because in recital 47, the regulation states that direct marketing purpose may be regarded as carried out of legitimate interest. So GDPR allowed, but it used the word may. So in certain circumstances, you have to prove that yes, whatever communication or whatever campaign we are running and connecting with the data subject, in that case, both interests are there. Both parties having the interest to do this communication, or the both the parties are getting benefited from this offer which has been sent to the through the communication to the individual. So this is again a lawful ground which GDPR allowed, but there is may. So it is the responsibility of the organization who is using this lawful ground that they should have the proper documentation when it is required at the time of audit or something. So they should have thoroughly justify through documentation that yes, why the both the parties are getting benefited through this legitimate interest. Like especially in the, if you see, there are B2B communication. You are sending your product or services to another organization. So here, if your product and services is giving benefit to the other organization, and you can see that that organization have the certain kind of requirement, and so if that criteria is meeting, then it should come under the legitimate interest. So this is again a lawful ground on which the data can be, the marketing purpose, it can be used.
Okay, yes. So yeah, we've seen that, most of the times the only lawful basis that's claimed is consent. And most people are not aware that legitimate interest is also another good lawful basis on which you can process data for your marketing activities. So that's specifically for direct marketing, I would say. So the next question that we had to our audience was, is it on marketers to ensure that data remains secure and accurate? Okay, so most people have answered yes, and that's true. That data should be accurate in nature, and you should constantly be looking at your database to ensure that the data that you're collecting is secure through various means. So what do you think, companies can do to make sure that their databases that they use for marketing activities are kept secure? Like, what kind of security measures can they take? Just two or three would be sufficient.
Yes, it is the responsibility of the controller who is collecting and the information, or who is deciding the purpose and means of that particular uh, information for the processing. So it is the responsibility to have a secure storage. They should use the encryption type when the data is getting transferred from one place to another place, or the storage should be in secured data centers, and the backup should be there. There should be, if this particular database goes down, so in that case the copy or the second part that come and work at the same time, because getting the right, not non-availability of the data is again against the GDPR. So data availability is also required. So we have to keep the storage limited, means secure, and also we should have the pure air control backup, so the data will be available at the time. And in storing, it is also important that for what period we have to keep this data stored, because the time is very important. Whatever, and this information, when we earlier talk about transparency, at that time also we have to tell to the data subject that okay, this purpose we are taking your data, and we will be keeping this data for this certain period, and as soon as this activity complete or this period complete, we will be doing either deleting or giving you back, or whatever being agreed at that time, we will take the action accordingly. So in storage, the time is also important, the duration is also important, that at what time you can keep this that data.
Okay, yes. So, as we were previously saying, yeah, transparency is an important requirement. So, Kapsa, what do you think, in terms of, say, in your privacy notice, what kind of information would you want to give your users or your consumers when you're telling them about your marketing activity? Like, what are the points that you would want to mention specifically in your privacy notice?
Yes, in privacy notice, it should be clearly these in normal language which anyone can understand. In simple classified language, it should be written that what information we are collecting, why we are collecting this information, for what purpose the information is going to be used, for what period we will keep this information, when, to whom we are transferring this information we are sharing with, and what we will do once the purpose is completed. So these questions should be clearly justified in your privacy statement, that it should be, or privacy notice, and they should be written in normal or the layman language so anyone can understand, depend upon what kind of audience you are dealing with.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience. So the question is, what about companies like, say, Practo that keep sending you messages saying, do you need a consultation with a doctor? And this is something that we saw during COVID as well, when we got messages from insurance companies telling us that we need life insurance or a daily health checkup or something like that. So, what about companies like this? So, what about these messages that we get from companies like Practo saying, there's an offer and come get a health checkup? So, what about them? Are they complying with GDPR, or is there some kind of non compliance from their part? And probably another aspect of this question is, how can they probably comply if they're not complying? So, Kapil, do you want to take that question?
Yes, these companies actually collect that data from somewhere. Either the person, the data subject has visited their site, or uh, there are some, they have given this information to some A company A, and they have given, the company A has given the information to company B. So this is how means there, those organizations like Pecto and all that, they have some information, or they are keeping this information in place, that from where they have collected that data, and they might have the legitimate criteria out there through which they are sending you the mail. This is what we can expect, right? That those companies are using the ethical practices when they are sending the information. But what I say that when they are sending these communication to individual, they should have an opt-out feature out there in their communications. That is helpful. That if the data subject find that, okay, I don't know when I have shared this data and I'm not interested, so the data subject should have the right to opt out from these lists. So further, he or she will not get these kind of information. And the data subject also has to be vigilant. So when if they have received the information from, or getting these mails from company A, at that time, if we are not interested that kind of the communication, right? So we can go and use that opt-out feature or unsubscribe feature. Majority of the companies or who are doing this, taking seriously the privacy regulations, they are using these ethical practices to put the unsubscribe or the opt-out feature in their mails or communications. So the data subject also have the responsibility to get benefited from these features which the organization are providing.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I hope we've answered that question properly. So moving on to a GDPR compliance checklist. So some of the things that we suggest, our clients to do or organizations to do when they conduct marketing is, first of all, to understand the kind of data that you're collecting. So this can be easily done through a data mapping exercise. And of course, it requires consultation with your stakeholders. That means anybody who's involved in the marketing activity, you would want to involve them in your discussions to get a clear idea of the kind of personal data and the sensitive personal data that you're collecting. So this data mapping exercise is extremely important to building a privacy program and to building your privacy controls around, the data that you collect. So it will determine the kind of security measures you're going to put in place. How often do you want to review your, your records of processing activities, and what you would want to mention in your privacy policy as well. So this is all something that flows from your first activity, which would be data mapping. So once you've done your data mapping activity, some of the other things becomes easier. Like say, for example, 5, which is fine-tuning your privacy policy, limiting your data collection, identifying your legal basis, and also establishing a consent management platform. So coming to consent, that is also a very important aspect in marketing. Like we were saying that, you can only send marketing emails when somebody has opted in to receiving those marketing emails or advertisements. So, Kapsa, what is your idea? Like, how can organizations effectively manage consent and, have a consent management in place? What do you think, is some of the ways that companies can go about it?
Yes, for the consent is the main legitimate criteria which the organizations have to take care. Whenever the organization is collecting the information, they should use privacy by design, privacy by default settings at the moment, because when we are designing any marketing campaign or some web pages or mails which is related to marketing, we will be specific here in today's session topic that related to marketing purpose. Or otherwise also when we are designing some program, some application or software. So at the time of designing, GDPR or these regulations want that you should be proactive at that moment, right? So privacy should be by default in the settings. Whenever, so at the time when taking the consent should be in fair manner. That, like for example, if you are, there is a web form and there are 2 buttons. One is accept and one is reject. So the company should give both the button. So the user have to give that explicit consent, that user have the choice, or data subject should have the choice to say, yes, I am accepting it, right? So if we are giving only one button out there, only accept. So we are not giving enough choice to the data subject. So these things should be in design. And also, if you see that some good companies which are using the privacy by design, when there are 2 buttons, one is accept and one is reject. So reject button is actually prompted. So by mistake, if somebody has pressed enter or something, so it will not accept, it is reject. Actually, the organization want or the company want that you hover your mouse over the accept button and press accept. So this is giving a very fair option to the data subject that they should have the explicit consent out there. So the organizations, or when they are using it either for marketing purpose or some other purpose, when they are taking the consent, it should be in fair manner. And the privacy by design and default, that these techniques will help them to achieve this task.
Okay, thanks so much. So the next question that we have is from Daniel. So his question has 3 parts to it. So let's start out with the first. So what about cold calling marketing? How has that been impacted by the GDPR? And the second part of the question is, what are the rights of the data subjects that we have to ensure while doing this cold calling marketing?
Right. Now, cold calling means calling through phone or by email. Anyway, we are connecting with the data subject, and
Yeah.
we have minimum his or her contact number with us or email with us. So means we are processing certain kind of PIIs of the individual. So in both the cases, when either we are sending the cold emails or we are sending the or we are calling the cold call. So first of all, GDPR is not there to kill these marketing practices, right? It is not that even this is not a regulation to regularize either the marketing or the cold calls in the business. It is about protecting the personal data. So what the organization has to practice, that the data which is collected from the individual, it should be from the reliable resources or either directly from the and after that, are we, when we are collecting the data directly from the data subject, are we using all the data privacy principles out there? Are we collecting it in transparent manner? We are fair when we have taken the consent. The legitimation criteria is there. So these things we have to take care. The interest of the data subject should be protected. The data subject rights should be guarded. So the first question's answer is that either you are doing the cold calls or in any way you are connecting with the data subject directly for the marketing purpose. The answer is same. There is GDPR is not stopping you to doing your business, to using these strategies. You can use it, but you have to comply with the GDPR regulation to do these things in fair and transparent manner. The second is the beauty of these these data privacy regulations, that they have given the rights to the individual. They have given the power to the individual to safeguard for their very personal information, which they have shared for some purpose. So they have given the rights to the individual to right to access, right to be informed. Right to be informed means at the time when you are collecting the data, whatever we have discussed earlier. So those information should have been given to the data subject. Then right to access. When you are collected the data, after that the data subject anytime can ask that, okay, what kind of information you have, and you should give either the copy or access. The data subject has the right to opt out from any kind of direct marketing. This is the right actually the data subject have in GDPR, especially for the data this direct marketing purpose. That anytime if the data subject find that he or she should not be part of the this particular processing, then they can ask for opt out. That is why majority of these mails or the campaigns, they have the option to get the person opt out. And anytime the data subject has the right to get his data removed or to forget from your data list, and data subject also have the right to opt out from any kind of automated decision making. So data subject has given many rights by these privacy regulation, and this has come once GDPR has given these rights, and this is the beauty of what I feel of these regulations.
Yes. Okay. So we just move on to the last part of our conversation today, which talks about what happens if companies don't comply with privacy regulations and specifically the principles of the GDPR that we were just talking about. So, some of the things that can happen is, first of all, fines, and it can be extremely steep. We've seen that the maximum amount is 4% of the firm's worldwide annual revenue, or up to 20 million euros. There's also been a ban on processing of data, meaning that you cannot collect the data anymore and process that data. Another is, say, to delete that data because you've unlawfully collected this data. That's another repercussion of not complying with privacy regulations. So I think we don't have any more questions. If anybody has any questions, you can just drop it in the chat box, or there's a specific Q&A section which you can also use to ask any questions. So, Kapil, so since we're nearing the end of our session today, what do you think are the three main things that companies can do to comply with the GDPR when they design their marketing strategies or when they come up with a new marketing campaign? What are the top three things that you'd suggest they do? Say, for example, they're a startup and they want to market their new products and services. So, what are the top three compliance measures that they would have to keep in mind?
Yes, there are many actually things which they have to comply or they have to take care at the time of when they are designing their strategy for the direct marketing. Like they should make sure that they have an appropriate reason, right? And the to whom they are targeting. So the reason is most necessary why we are doing this business, why we are doing this marketing campaign. So there should be a clear, appropriate region prospect which is getting targeted. Second thing, the most important thing that we have to keep the data, the record of data that how and why we are using this particular campaign. So all the information related to how we are collecting and how we are processing this information should be with the organization for all the marketing campaign. Like when you are sending all the cold mails, so then you have to notify to the recipient in that. So that mail has to be designed in a manner where all these uh, principles are clear out there, or the proper way to getting the consent to unsubscribe the user and the removal process. These all should be given in that particular mail or that particular campaign. And the most important thing which help to the business as well, that keep your data clean, keep your databases clean, remove if the lead has completed, remove it. If the you are not we have sent the communication to means database A and we found that okay, these persons these mails are irresponsive since last months, 1 month or 2 months, then we should clean them and keep the data as much clean as possible. So that is helping you as well. You are sending the percentage of getting the leads will be higher when you are sending the clear targeted data, and be compliant with GDPR in the use this when you are collecting at that time. Use the transparency when you are keeping the information, then keep it in a secure storage. When you are transferring the data, it should be either encrypted or the safeguard should be taken care. Whatever security features is possible for you, then you should comply with. So appropriate security measures has to be taken when we are handling with these personal data. And most importantly, when because once you will be dealing with the data subject, you are actually sending a lot of communication directly speaking with the data subject, then you will get the complaint also, because the more number you are connecting, the more chances of getting the complaint from those individuals. So the organization, the company should have a proper mechanism or a management system through which they should handle these complaints in fair manner. When you are getting the complaints, it should be recorded and all the actions should be noted, and it should reach to the good resolution, whatever the complaint. So complaint handling is again a very important task to comply with any regulation or especially with GDPR.
Yes, so that's some very good tips to take away from this session today. So before we end, we always save the best for last. So what we have for everybody today attending this session is a compliance checklist that we've specially created specifically for marketing departments, or if you're the head of compliance, or you work in the privacy department and you have to design a marketing strategy or advise your departments on marketing. So this is a sort of checklist that we've created, and we've dropped in the link in the chat section, and you can download this for free. So the checklist that we've created is based on the broad principles of the GDPR. And we've also gone very specifically into data subject rights, into how you're collecting consent. If, say, for example, if your lawful basis is legitimate interest, then how would you justify that? And whether you would need to do a legitimate interest assessment. These are all the requirements that you can capture in our checklist. And like we were discussing throughout the session, some of the principles that you would want to look at in terms of compliance is accuracy, data minimization, and also providing your users with the right to object to direct marketing, and also the opt-out option. So all of these principles have been captured in our checklist. And we've made it very simple by also providing a section where we break down what the article talks about, what the article in the GDPR talks about, and what the business requirement is. So this section is to help you ask your stakeholder in a simple way whether they're complying with these principles and whether they're complying with the specific requirements of the GDPR. So this is a checklist that, like I said, we've dropped in the link, and so you can download it for free. Thank you so much, Kapil. So I think we're nearing the end of our session. So thank you everybody for joining in today, and thank you so much for your insights, sir.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, everyone.